Okay, welcome back. So this is back to our series presentations on writing a literature review. This is lecture 4 in this series. I think there's going to be 5 in this entire series, so we're getting towards the end here. Today we're going to be talking about the organization and synthesis of your work. Okay, so in particular today we'll be discussing these items over here. So you've read all this stuff, right? Maybe as many as 100 different sources, right? How do you organize all this stuff? How do you put it together in a way that it's useful for you when you're actually writing your literature review? And you're able to grab from all these sources. So we'll talk a little bit about organizing your ideas from the literature, organizing findings versus organizing the methods that you're going to employ, and then also how do we sort of synthesize these ideas. Well, first of all, what does it mean to synthesize ideas across a wide variety of work into a way that's sort of coherent for your readers and is appropriate for the type of work that you're doing? I don't know if you're anything like me. You read things, maybe you read an article, you get excited about the article, and you think, oh my gosh, how I'm gonna use this in my own work, right? But it's not time to write yet, so you end up reading dozens more articles, and it becomes hard to sort of figure out how where all these sort of fit into your work. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to share some of my own process. Now, what I'm going to share from you is from actually a paper that I'm working on right now, so it's still somewhat in process, so you're not seeing concluded work, but I want to share it in process because I want to show you that sort of what I'm trying to explain to you is something that I actually also do. Okay, to get started, right? So I'm going to show you this on the next slide, but I try to organize my work along these lines here. So I'm going to, in a matrix, I'm going to put down the citation, right? I'm going to put the field and subfield that the author is working from, the method that they've employed, and a few keywords and notes for myself. Okay. Well, really more down here is one of the two matrices that I'm going to show you in this presentation that shows you how really I organize my work in a way that I can draw upon it when writing the literature review and in fact in doing my own research. So this sheet here is part of a sheet on findings, right? So these are papers that are related to the work that I'm doing right now. So in the first column there it says citation. These are peer-reviewed papers and books. You see that in the first column here, I'm going to grab my pointer. The first column here is the citation, right? So this is I want to say it's an APA form, but it's a citation for this paper so that when I write the works cited or the bibliography at the end, right, I have these all ready to go. I could just draw them straight off of here in a very quick manner. Okay, they're arranged alphabetically, you'll note. Then here, subtopic. This is the field that the author in question is writing from. You may, not wish to include this, or you might wish to include other things in your sort of matrix of literature. I find this useful as an economist who often writes in areas that are better developed in other fields. You'll notice a lot here in sociology, but also criminology, psychology, sports sciences, so on and so forth, but nothing from economics. And that's the case in this paper that I'm working on. There's really no literature in economics. The literature is completely from other fields. And I want to remember which other field that I'm drawing from. In the next column over is the method that was applied in this paper. So you'll notice several ethnographic studies as well as textual studies. There's a couple others if we were to scroll further down. Okay, I want to make note of this because again, when I write this up in my literature review, there's a very good chance that I want to mention the method that was employed in this paper or any other ones. Okay, so again, these columns are designed in such a way to help me eventually synthesize these works into the work that I'm doing. Okay, next column over is a series of keywords, and then finally are some notes to myself. Now those notes are very brief. They're just a sentence or two, right? I'm not going to write a whole paragraph in each one of these papers because that's more than I need, right? That's more than I need. If I want to read these papers, I have them in a file, I can draw upon them. What I'm looking for here in this matrix is something that I can grab very quickly and easily, and then draw into the literature review I'm writing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about those keywords, because that's maybe the most important part of all of these. You'll notice that those keywords are not sort of standard keywords that you might find in, say listed underneath the abstract in a journal article. Those keywords are keywords that I have constructed that are that convey to me the relevant threads in this literature. Okay, so I didn't write those keywords at the moment that I read that paper. Maybe I put one or two of them, but I didn't put them all. Okay, and I changed them as time went on, as I worked further and further through the literature. Because as I work through that literature, what I'm doing is I'm identifying threads that appear in multiple papers that I want to make sure to touch on because they're clearly important threads. So if an idea shows up in 6, 10, 12, 15 papers, that's an important thread in the literature, and I want to make note of it when I do my own literature review. So those keywords are notes to me about things that pop up over and over again in the literature and are present in that paper. Okay, there's only about 7 or 8 of those keywords, and this, like you said, we're only to the D's here on this. This list is quite long. Okay, so those are really the threads in this literature. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, all those papers in this particular paper, right, the paper that I'm working on right now, all those threads or all those papers are not written in economics. Okay, and as a consequence, in this case, I really want to separate out my methodology from my findings. Right now, we've talked about that in some previous presentations. Here, it's very clear why I want to do that. I think because I want to be employing methods as an economist that are appropriate to economics, right? This is my field, this is where I work, right? But most of my findings in the area that I'm researching are in other fields, right? So what I want to do is I want to have the findings separate from the methods, because the methods are going to be from economics, of course, right? And so in this case, what I've done is I've created a second matrix that is specifically focused on the method that I'll employ. Okay, sorry, I'm getting way over to the side here with this one, but over here we see a chunk of my matrix associated with the method. Now, in this case, in this study, this is a non-market valuation paper that I'm working on, and particularly it employs travel cost methodologies. Okay, so those papers over there are all papers that employ travel cost methods. Okay, and now in this case, I've just made the citation and then the notes, because of course the method would be travel cost across all of them, and the fields for all of these are all economics too, right? So, in cases where everything is from one space, there's no differentiation. It doesn't make sense, at least from my thinking, to create separate columns or anything like that. Okay. Instead, the notes become more relevant. So in this case, what am I doing for notes? Well, of course, I'm making note of the nuances or the specifics that are different in the application of these methods across these different papers, because I'm trying to kind of figure out, what I need to be doing when I'm working through the econometrics here. I'm also making note of the specific challenges, econometric challenges that are being addressed in these papers, because I want to make sure that I address those as well. Okay. I'm also looking for papers and writing down papers that have cited the papers that are using a method very similar to the one that I want to use, so that I can be sure to be up to date in the methodology that I'm taking. This second construction here is going to help me not only in the construction of my literature review, but also in the construction of my methods section. Let us then turn to the synthesis of ideas. So how do we sort of put all this stuff together? Okay, so first let's define this idea of synthesis. Okay, over here we see analysis defined. So this is the disassembly of ideas. This is what we're doing when we're reviewing the literature, right? When we're doing our literature search. We're disassembling the ideas. Why was it put together this way? What is its purpose? What is its function? Okay. With synthesis, what we're doing is we're reassembling components from other ideas to set the stage for a new set of idea or new research. Okay, and right below me here, I have a picture from an old movie. This is from the old Western, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which I think is a pretty popular movie, although quite old now. And this scene here below is where one of the main characters named Tuco, you see, has a variety of pistols laid out in front of him. What he does in this scene, and if it weren't for copyright, I would show this scene, but there we go. What he does in this scene is he lays out a whole host of pistols in front of him and then proceeds to take them all apart. And he takes pieces from each different pistol and puts them together to assemble his own custom weapon. I believe it was actually sort of copied in one of the John Wick movies. But I haven't seen those, so I'm not familiar with that. But you might check that. You might be like, oh yeah, they did that in John Wick 3 or whatever too. But this is synthesis, okay? This is synthesis. So we're taking components from a wide variety from sort of the existing base of knowledge, and then we're reassembling them in such a way that sort of sets the stage for the work that we want to do. Okay, in constructing our synthesis, so what pieces do we sort of take from, right? What do we put together, right? What do we leave behind and what do we put together? So, we need to think carefully. What are we trying to say? What are we trying to get across with our own work? How does the things that we know already, or the world knows, the literature knows already, how does it frame that which we wish to learn? Right? So sort of what is the existing structure around what we wish to learn? What are the relevant threads of knowledge, right? So this is where, as I'm reading, right, I'm going, oh my gosh, Pete, everybody's talking about this, and oh, that paper talked about that, and this one, and this one, and this one. And so I'm putting that in those keywords. Now, if you're thinking like, well, that would suggest you're actually looking at each of these papers multiple times. That's right, I am. On a first read through on a literature search, I'm just hitting the abstracts and very quickly going through it. And then if I see emergent threads, right, they're clearly significant. And then I'm going back and reviewing the papers in more depth. Okay, and so each time I'm reviewing things, I'm pulling from the search to the depth I need it, right, to the depth I need it. Finally, then, in our review of the literature, we should be identifying what are the gaps in the knowledge, what isn't known. So in the case of this paper that I'm working on, there's all these discussions of values from sociologists and geographers and architecture, people who do architecture and things like that, but nobody's attempted to put a dollar value on this stuff, right? And so, of course, that's what we do as economists. Okay, so it's a clear gap in the knowledge where you have a diverse set of intellectuals talking about values of physical space, but yet there's no economics, no actual estimated values in numerical terms or quantitative terms. Okay, so it's a clear gap in the knowledge, which this is what I'm going to walk through with my own work. Right, or I am walking through with my own work, I should say. Okay, and this as researchers, this is what we do, right? We learn what's known. The more we learn about what's known, the more it becomes clear what's not known. Okay, as well, and what's not known gives us the opening for what's appropriate for us to spend our time on researching. Okay, and so what we want to be doing then is we want to be talking about, in our literature review, sort of, what's known, and then also where are those gaps about what's known, what's unknown, which of course gives us the opening for the rest of our paper, the method, the analysis, the conclusions, everything else, and how we fill that hole a little bit. Okay, a couple things to emphasize when we're constructing this synthesis of ideas. First of all, as long as these questions are being addressed from the previous slide, there's no single right way to synthesize ideas. Indeed, you may find for different papers, you sort of feel like there's different ways to do this, right? There's different best ways to do this. For this paper that goes along with this other information, my literature review sort of focuses on the various significant threads that exist within the findings, within the subfield already. Okay, because I believe that's most appropriate. But it may be the case that other areas should be the focus and should determine the structure. So for example, if I was writing a paper where the method was novel, I was developing a new econometric method, my synthesis would want to be structured around that, okay, as opposed to sort of taking findings from another field and applying econometric methods to them, which is the case here. Okay. It also should be said that our goals here really should not be one particular form or structure. Okay. Our focus really should be on providing clarity for future researchers, brevity, again, for current readers as well as future researchers. We don't want to go on and on and on, and humility about what's known and what's not known, right? It's a common used phrase, but I certainly find it to be true that the more I learn, the more I learn what I don't know. Now well into my career, I think I know almost nothing, right? Whereas 30 years ago, I thought I knew almost everything. That's how it goes. All right, I think that's a good place to call this. This has been our fifth in the series. I'll put links to the rest of the series below. Excuse me, sorry, this is the fourth. This is the fourth in the series. I'll put links below. Thanks very much, and we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody.